guess, Wayne, I guess you can start the live stream. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's meeting, Academic and Strategic Initiatives Committee. I want to remind everyone that this meeting is being live streamed to YouTube for the general public, and all audio and video is being captured and recorded. Heather, will you call roll?
Dr. Mohammed Babar, Mr. Colby Burks said he'll be joining in and out. He's got midterm finals, so he will be here as he can. CP Chair Ben Setter.
Here.
Okay. Committee Chair Lori Harper.
Here.
Mr. Lucas Spencer.
Here.
Ms. Lydia Ravichandran. Dr. Robert Statt.
Here.
He's here. There you go. And Mr. Kevin Weaver. So we have 4 in attendance as of 8 out of 8. If you want to skip the approval of minutes, let me double check with our general counsel, make sure that we can take votes at the moment.
That's fine. We'll just keep on moving forward and we'll come back to the minutes. So we have, I guess, a grant this morning from the James Graham Brown Foundation. And so you may have seen it this morning. The news release went out regarding the new grant that CPE recently received. And President Thompson, I know you can't stay long, so why don't you go ahead and talk about this grant?
Thank you, Chair Harper. Let me just say that nothing's been done like this anywhere in the U.S. So I'm proud to say Kentucky is first again in creating this sort of collaborative. And I'll tell you a little bit about it, and then I can answer any questions that you may have. You know, we were awarded a $2.13 million 3-year grant from the James Graham Brown Foundation to set this first of a kind collaborative up with CPE. And one of the reasons why we were awarded was because CPE has done so much in what I call a systematic approach in looking at student success, equity, closing gaps, and we're doing it at a fairly rapid rate. And so they noticed that. So this is something we've been working on for a couple of years, really, but it came to fruition not too long ago. And you saw, as you mentioned, the press that went out on it this morning. This is significant because it's one of the largest grants that we've ever received from a private source. And we've been discussing such a collaborative for a long time ourselves, but when James Graham Brown came along, we really designed something that I think is really unique and sits a little bit outside the bureaucracy so we can move fairly fast. And it's really designed to improve the outcomes of low-income students and underrepresented minorities. The model of the Kentucky Collaborative is based on successful collaboratives in other states. However, you know, they have been limited to community colleges. What we're doing here is not only bring the community colleges in, but also 4-year campuses. And we'll focus on 3 primary areas. One is to build networks to provide opportunities for faculty and staff to connect and share problems and ideas and work collaboratively to identify solutions. So we know what some of our problems are, but bringing the best minds together and the best practices together from around the country to focus on this is truly what we're trying to do. But we're also providing professional development. And this may include training in specific areas that focus on these solutions, as well as technical assistance we'll be offering to campuses who are a part of this collaborative. And we're going to be working with everybody, but we'll be working heavily with a few of our campuses that are needing those resources. And we're going to be expanding resources. This may include identifying national partners and other external funding partners to help us to move this agenda along. And we'll be providing research as well as analytics support. As you all know, we have a very strong data and analytics system here at CPE and here in Kentucky with KY Stats. And we'll be communicating a lot of these outcomes. And so you're going to see us be very transparent, as hopefully you've seen over the last few years, that we are putting everything out there. And that way everybody kind of knows where we're at. So much of the next 6 to 9 months will be dedicated to staffing this up and planning all the elements, strategic elements that we're going to have in place. We will have an executive director, an assistant director, and a research analyst that will be a part of this collaborative. And so there will also, which is really neat about this, we'll have an advisory committee made up of campus representatives, student success experts from around the country, business partners, and community leaders to help us to think about our work and how it reaches way beyond what I call just the academic environment. We're heavily focused on this 60 by 30. And we know that we're going to have to bring all these folks together to make this happen. I could tell you a lot more, but you probably want me to shut up for right now. And so I'll take any questions that you may have.
I don't know how to say
Go
that I
ahead,
have a
Luke.
question. Thanks.
Go ahead.
What can we on CP do to help this along? Is there anything that we can do to help accelerate it? What do you need from us?
Yeah, great question, Luke, and I appreciate that question, because what we need from you probably comes in 3 facets in my mind. Now, my staff probably would think they may have other stuff, but one is, as we're talking about the strategic agenda, as we're building it now, I mean, we're going to be lean and mean and very straightforward focused, because that's what we've been. We kind of took the last strategic agenda and focused it, right? So we're asking that this agenda be focused. So the board, you guys are the determinants along with staff of that. So we need to be focused on those elements we need to be pushing, such as adult learners, low income, things that we haven't moved, but also doubling down on things that we have. So that's number one. Number two, we'll be bringing back to you what we consider are the outcomes. We ask that you communicate those outcomes. You saw what happened in this last communication we had from the board. This is powerful that our board is not only kept informed, as we try to do, but you are energized with it, with a lack of a better phrasing, right? That you're spreading this conversation out, doing the things that we need to do. And number three, I think, is that we would ask you to come in and see some of the work that we're doing. I mean, not necessarily getting your fingers dirty and operationally, that's not what boards do, I get, but we want you to see and we want you to taste the elements of it. So this is so unique that I think folk like you all would be appreciative to see how the soup is made, you know, and see what we do from there. So those would be the 3 things that I would argue for.
Okay, thank you.
Aaron, let me jump in just a little bit. I've been reviewing some of the diversity plans from these schools, and they're getting more succinct, stronger, and better focused. So we're making progress in that avenue, just in an awareness amongst the colleges.
Now, you know, Dr. Stat, Bob, I appreciate that statement, because that's right. And what you all have done in that area is really focus, kind of like what we've been trying to do the last 3 or 4 years, really focus ourselves on what are those improvements that we need to make, and let's drive, you know, solutions to those improvements, right? And that's what I've heard you do this, by the way, personally, but I also know your committee has done this. Okay, here's some items that you're not, in other words, we'd rather have something that's inch long and a mile deep than something a mile long and an inch deep, right? And so that's how you drive those outcomes that we're talking about.
Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you so much. It's an exciting opportunity that we've been given. So looking forward to it.
And Madam Chair, can I say one thing? I want to thank James Graham Brown, their board, and their staff. They invited me in to, and they never do this, but they invited me in to talk about CPE and to talk about what we're doing, just to see, and they were very complimentary, extremely. So I just want to thank the board, and I want to thank, their board and our board, but I do want to give them a shout out in this recorded event, because they're futuristically thinking about what's good for the state. And they don't normally make these sort of grants that have such a big footprint in the state. So they went outside their comfort zone, because they were respecting some of the things that we were doing. So I want to give them equally the respect and the complimentary statement in front of this group, this committee. So thank you.
Great. Moving on, I think now that Ms. Vidya has joined us, we could take the minutes up. So
Sorry, there's trouble logging into Onboard for some reason this morning, so.
that's all right. So everybody has received the minutes from the February 1st meeting and your materials. Are there any objections to those as presented? If none, they are approved as distributed. Thank you so much. Moving on to the new academic programs, we've got a full agenda today, so I'm not going to waste any time. Up first are 5 new academic programs proposed for our approval. We have campus representatives here to present on those programs. And because of our tight schedule, I'll ask that the reps take no more than 2 minutes to give us their highlights, and then give us a few minutes for Q&A before action's taken. And Miss Melissa Bell will take the lead on this for us. So Miss Bell.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. We do have 5 programs in front of you today. They're very strong proposals, been thoroughly vetted. We're going to start today with 2 of them from Eastern Kentucky University. We have a Bachelor of Science in Global Hospitality and Tourism. So with this program, EKU is gearing up to meet the expected demand and increase in tourism post-pandemic. This is an online program with an interdisciplinary curriculum, which sets it apart. And then they also have a Master of Science in Instructional Design and Learning Technology. And I'm sure we have all heard about the focus on online learning during this pandemic. So this program will address the need for instructional designers and other professionals in this arena. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to EKU's Associate Provost, Jennifer Weiss. She can introduce her colleagues.
Thanks, Melissa. I'm going to turn it over first to Karina Christopher, who will present on the BS in Global Hospitality and Tourism.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Melissa. You did a great job introducing our proposed program. So the Online Global Hospitality and Tourism program is intentionally very different than other hospitality and tourism programs that you may have seen. Not only is it very interdisciplinary, but it also has a strong focus on the human and trying to meet cultural competence with appropriate customer service. And we also have 2 concentrations as part of that are very, very unique. So the first one is gastronomic tourism, and the second one is the sustainable hospitality. And what makes them very unique is the fact that there is not really another program in the nation that has something like that. It also is built so that we can not only foresee the changes that are happening in the future. COVID is a perfect example of those unexpected changes, but also how we're going to have to support our local economies. We're going to have to support people who are coming from other areas, other cultures into our local communities. So we're trying to really establish professionals that can meet the future demands of that industry. So if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer anything you might have.
Actually, I like the program, but you have certain challenges. I'm in Louisville, and getting that tourism back and the positive image is going to be very tough. And your education process, I hope, addresses some of the negative aspects of what's gone on.
Yes, absolutely. We took that into consideration. And, one of the things we're really talking about from just even the intro class is the barriers to, people being together, but not just because of COVID, but maybe because of floods or typhoons or natural disasters. We really planned that from the beginning, what some of the, challenges are to meeting the people's needs and getting people to go on tours again, or to stay in hotels, or, to go out to restaurants. So we had that in mind from the very beginning when we were planning the curriculum. So they learn it throughout many classes, how to meet those demands. So that's a good question.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I was wondering what other comparable programs we have within the state that offer something like this? And what other universities might have something like this?
So the University of Kentucky and Western Kentucky University both have a hospitality program. It's a traditional hospitality program that has a lot of business, a lot of marketing. There, and then, you know, Sullivan has like a hospitality program. So ours is online, which theirs is not. And also none of the programs have the core classes like what we do that are very strongly focused on cultural competence or the concentrations. That's not in the state at all. Nationwide, there is no gastronomic tourism concentration anywhere in the nation. There's, I think, Florida International has one class on gastronomic tourism. And then Utah State has a sustainable hospitality tract as well. But really nothing in this area, because this is a kind of a forward thinking area in hospitality and tourism. It's kind of where the industry is moving.
Thank you.
Foodies went out.
You know, people love food. You can't live without food. So how can you say no to eating?
I do it almost every day.
I hope so.
I didn't have a question. I just wanted to thank the folks that came up. I think this is very forward thinking. This is thinking, you know, 5-10 years into the future. And so I just wanted to, you know, go on record saying I think this is well done.
Thank you.
And with that, I think we can turn it over to the next program from EKU.
Thanks, Melissa. I'm going to turn this to Adekamoji Ankara, who is going to speak about our instructional design and learning technology MS proposal.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Melissa and Jennifer, both for the wonderful introduction. The Instructional Design and Learning Technology Master's degree program is designed to basically confer readiness skills specific to students in the program. For now, the program core consists of three different areas: multimedia design for learning, graphic interface design, and online distance learning. All three provide hands-on skills to our graduates when they leave, when they are out with the degrees that they come to acquire. The employer demand for the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics suggests that instructional designers enrollment is growing faster in the average growth of about 123%. And the need for this profession have skyrocketed during the pandemic. As we all know, the pandemic has demonstrated a need for more training to be delivered in digital format or virtual format as well. Training previously conducted in face-to-face had to migrate to virtual platforms. And to provide timely personal training in various areas, our degree would help resolve such issues to train students and candidates that decide to pursue the master's program as well. And a lot of companies are now seeing that digital formats have become very important, a cheaper way to go, and also bring in more employee performance quickly to their companies. So we are working, the program will work diligently to help the external stakeholders to achieve these aims, as well. The program also delivers interdisciplinary certificate options and then intradisciplinary certificate options to aid other areas to pursue the degree program if they would like to, which would help. The program is already a diverse field that encompasses business management, pedagogies, psychology, user experience. So it's a more broader field whereby these certificates will also support other degree programs that we want to go ahead and pursue the degree as well. We've seen student demand being it, a lot of students are interested in pursuing, this degree online formats, and the instructional design has also become very important in K through 12 schools, as well. So this will be a big, factor to the degree as well. We hope that this program will push forward and be more successful, since now it's become more critical that this degree is needed in in the world at the moment. For now, we hope that we'll be able to deliver this degree to everybody else. And thank you. Any questions?
Yes, I'm wondering about the faculty that will be presenting this. Here at University of Louisville, we do have some issues with faculty adapting to these techniques, and our Delphi Society, or Delphi Center, excuse me, helps train these people, but the training and available faculty that are already conversant with this is pretty small.
I'll respond to that. Yeah, sure. We have also completed a course by course faculty qualifications alignment grid for this program to submit to SAC COC. And one of the things that's unique about this program is that we are sourcing faculty from our Institute for the Creative Arts. We're sourcing them from communication. We're sourcing them from many different disciplines, so that they come with a particular skill set in design, in understanding user experience. So when we're looking at this pedagogically, it's a little, it's related to when we think of it in practice, and it's also pushing it a little further, right, into these areas of how do we teach for something that maybe not all the teachers on campus know about. And we're doing that through this very creative and graphic design driven manner.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion on the.
So moved.
Go ahead, Lucas.
Sorry.
I'll second it.
Yeah.
Okay,
So moved.
Lucas, we have a motion seconded by Dr. Stat. Any further discussions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Pose like sign. Motion carries. Moving on to the University of Kentucky.
Yes, we have two programs today. First is a Master of Science in Marketing. This is in response to a strong and growing job market for marketing related positions in Kentucky. This would be the first master's degree specifically in marketing in the state. It's different than an MBA in that an MBA has a much broader curriculum, while this program is focused specifically on marketing. And then there's a Master of Science in Strategic Human Resource Management and Analytics. So this is in response to employer need for human resource specialists who can think strategically and who can perform data analysis and understand analytics. So let's go ahead and start with the Master of Science in Marketing, and I'll turn it over to our UK colleagues.
Good morning, I'm Leslie Vincent. I'm here to discuss the Master's in Marketing. This is a 30 credit hour Plan B Master's program that will be delivered both in person as well as through synchronous instruction online. As mentioned, this is the only master's level program in marketing in the state of Kentucky, and in designing our curriculum, we decided to focus on those top skills and concepts that employers are asking for from students. Across these 10 courses, students will take topics such as marketing management, consumer insight, branding, corporate social responsibility, communications, analytics, big data, along with other topics as well. And in designing this curriculum, we really wanted to focus on the tangible skill sets that students need. So it's a great mix of both qualitative frameworks as well as the quantitative skills that marketing specialists will need in their careers. In particular, we have several courses focused on digital marketing that include social media, email campaigns, software that will be used in careers related to digital media, along with professional certifications that students will take as part of the completion of this course. Other things that I think stand out about this program is the branding course and the corporate social responsibility course that are in direct response to the needs for marketing professionals in today's environment. So again, a lot of emphasis on cutting edge software as well as topics that are relevant that will provide and value as we try to place these students. This program directly supports the University of Kentucky's strategic plan to strengthen the quality and distinctiveness of graduate education. It also promotes the strategic focus of specialized master's programs within the Gatton College of Business and Economics, and draws from the faculty expertise that we have within the Department of Marketing and Supply Chain here in the Gatton College. Very research active faculty, ranked 37th in North America and 40th worldwide, according to research productivity from the UT Dallas rankings. And so these top faculty will be teaching in this program, and we're excited to launch this with our students.
So any questions?
No questions? Let's move on.
Thank you.
All right, so we move on to human resource management.
All right, well, thank you very much for having me today. I'm really excited to be here to talk about the Master's of Science in Strategic Human Resource Management and Analytics, which we recognize as a mouthful, so we call it the SHRMA for short. Much like the hospitality degree that was presented earlier, we're trying to do something a little bit distinctive in our offering. And we have that distinctiveness based on some really good support from the business community. So when we decided we wanted to get into the graduate HR space, one of the first things I started doing was having conversations with people in the Bluegrass Society for Human Resource Management, in other positions of HR leadership here around the Commonwealth. And fortunately, as we were going through that process, we were lucky to hire an executive in residence named Brad Patrick, who has significant years of HR executive experience, who was able to connect us with even more folks to get their opinions. And as we were having these conversations, we saw the two things that kept coming up were reflective of trends that we've seen in the field and in research. And that is an increased emphasis on the strategic impact of HR and leveraging HR as a strategic partner, and the role of HR analytics and evidence-based decision-making to support that goal of having HR make meaningful contributions to an organization. So rather than launching a traditional MSHR and having a course in analytics or a course in strategy, which is very commonplace, we decided to be very proactive and design a program really around those two core elements of HR in terms of strategic HR and HR analytics, which is why we have the Master of Science in Strategic Human Resource Management and Analytics that we're presenting today. We feel this program is very distinctive and will complement other offerings within the Gatton College as a specialized master's program. One of the things that we're looking forward to is we think some of our distinctiveness people might be able to catch on and match as they realize that employers have a demand for this and that students have a need for these skills. But one of the real distinctive capabilities that we have is we are the first master's program in HR to really leverage social network analysis theory and principles. So our department is home to the Link Center for Social Network Analysis, which is the world's preeminent center for the study of social networks in organizations. And we have built 2 required courses as part of the program that will teach students how to conduct social network analysis and how to apply social network analysis in a human resource management context, which we think is really going to give students a distinctive capability when they get out on the market. Employers are increasingly starting to recognize the importance of relationships in the workplace and the management of those relationships to get as much strategic impact of the practices and policies that they have. So we're very excited to be launching this program, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you all might have about it.
Will this require new faculty?
No, it will not. We were fortunate enough prior to the pandemic to hire 2 new faculty who are very HR oriented, including one who has a lot of expertise in HR analytics. And so we're going to be able to leverage our current faculty to teach all of these courses.
Faculty time, and with tight budgets, that sort of thing, I don't think you have an overflow of faculty.
Yeah, I understand that. So these are predominantly new courses. We wanted to do a lot of these things from the ground up. Fortunately, we have some expertise in teaching several of these courses at other institutions. One of the faculty that's been helping me greatly in the development of this program was the former director of the MSHR program at Purdue University. And so she has taught a few of these courses in the past. And we have other faculty. We're doing our research methods in HR course that's taught by someone who's been teaching research methods in general for about 2 decades. The person who's teaching the intro to social network analysis is the person who wrote the software to conduct social network analysis and has been doing trainings across the world for it for the better part of, let's say, 30 years at this point. So we do have new courses that are a part of this program, but they're all leaning into current expertise that we have within the faculty and topics that they have taught several times in the past.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I would entertain a motion, if so be it, for the two programs at UK.
So moved.
Thank you, Lucas. Second by Dr. Stat, it looks like.
Yes.
I had my
I just
mute was
unmuted.
faster.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Thank you. Motion carries. Now we'll move to Western Kentucky.
So our final program today is a Master of Arts in Education, an MAED in Instructional Leadership. So this is a principal preparation program that builds on existing programs at WKU, but adds another pathway to principal certification. And it is at least partly in response to recent changes in state regulations. And I will leave it to our experts from WKU to explain that a little bit further. But with that, I will turn it over to WKU.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Gary Houchins, Professor of Education Administration at WKU, and we're happy to share this proposal with you this morning. As some of you may know, for many years, WKU, like most of our state universities, offered a master's degree pathway to principal certification. That changed in 2013 when the Education Professional Standards Board implemented new regulations that required applicants to principal preparation to already have a master's degree or rank 2. And therefore, we structured the program as a rank 1 or a 30 credit hours beyond the master's program. Now in 2019, the Standards Board approved a change in the regulations that now allows universities to admit students at the rank 2 or master's degree level. And we think that's a very good thing. We routinely have inquiries from prospective students who want to do a master's program in principal preparation, and this sets them up to be able to do a rank 1 in other advanced education administration areas. So we think that this will grow our pool of potential principal candidates, certainly will strengthen our program long term. And we've redesigned our master's degree so that it is now identical to the other certification pathways that we currently have at WKU at the certification only and rank 1 level. As you may know, WKU's been through a multi-year grant with the Wallace Foundation. We're one of 7 universities across the United States to redesign principal preparation, thinking about what the 21st century challenges are for school leadership. And so we're able to launch this new pathway to the principalship without adding any additional faculty or resources, but just opening up another gateway for students to be a part of our program. So we're excited about this opportunity for us and especially for the K-12 schools that we serve, and we appreciate your consideration of this proposal.
Questions?
I'm curious, you mentioned the principal pool. How big is that pool? And I'm just curious.
Well, our cohorts vary from semester to semester, but typically each year we're admitting between 15 and 30 students into the principal pool or into our program. But we know that what we hear from districts is that pool is not strong enough for the level of demand that they face. In particular, they are looking for candidates who are more diverse, who look more like the students that they are serving, and so our districts are very happy for us to be able to provide some additional pathways for prospective candidates that will ultimately serve in their school districts.
So what you're saying is that there are open positions for these candidates.
Yes, there are, and we're very pleased with both our SLLA pass rate of our program and the placement rate. Part of what we're doing at WKU through our partnership with Wallace Foundation is the development of a new leadership tracking system that will actually allow us to monitor where our students go and how the schools that they're serving in are doing. And that will help us inform ongoing program improvements in ways that I think will be beneficial to us and then ultimately to the schools where they're going to be working.
And one last simple question. Most of your applicants, are they residents or non-residents?
They are almost entirely residents. We do occasionally get someone from Tennessee, given our proximity. Our program is structured in a hybrid delivery format. We have found from our alumni that they very much prefer some face-to-face components in the program. And so we do a blend of online and face-to-face. And by virtue of that structure, we tend to get predominantly Kentucky residents.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? If not, this is the only program within Western Kentucky, so I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Lucas.
Second.
Second, thank you. Ben, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Thank you, motion carries.
Thank you all.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the academic program review project results. Last summer, we took a closer look at the work that was being done by Gray and Associates to restructure CPE's academic program review process. We've received an update at our January meeting, and now that the project is complete, Melissa Bill, what results can you share with us today?
Great, thank you. Heather, you can go ahead and advance to the next slide, please. So I wanted to give you a brief update on, well, basically it's a concluding final report on our process with Gray. And some of these slides I know you've seen before, but I did want to just kind of re-emphasize and put into context statewide program review. So there's institutional level program review, and then there's statewide program review. There's a lot of overlapping purposes that we've talked about before. Both processes are focused on continuous improvement, mission alignment, and efficiency measures. But institutions focus on the requirements from SAC, COC, and any programmatic accreditation requirements. And they look at academic quality measures. And at the state level, we have 4 criteria that I'll mention later on. And we are focusing on across the institution. So looking at the statewide level and data across institutions, not necessarily within the institutions. It's important to understand that statewide program review in Kentucky has been purposefully designed to complement, not replace, institutional program review. We wanted this, and we always want this to be a value-added process, not an extra process on top of what's already being done. Heather, next slide, please. So, statewide program review has been handled several different ways over the decades, but in 2019, CPE hired Gray Associates. We paused our program review process at the time so that we could really look at something very innovative and basically to set a new baseline of academic programs in Kentucky. So the process can be thought of in 3 parts. We have campus data analysis, we have the campus workshops, and we have statewide data analysis. On this slide, you'll see that the campuses analyzed both program markets and program economics. And in terms of the market analysis, there were over 50 metrics related to student demand, market demand, and data related to similar programs. Next slide. So all that data mentioned in the last slide was then used to inform these workshops on the campuses. So institutions used the data from the GRAY systems. They combined it with other data sources. They combined it with their institutional knowledge and expertise to analyze all their baccalaureate programs and categorize them into start, grow, sustain, fix, and sunset, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a minute. Next slide. So the criteria for statewide program review, we have basically 4 main criteria. And this slide shows the criteria and also how it was operationalized. So in terms of consistency with institutional mission, this was incorporated into the workshops that I just mentioned. The next criterion is unnecessary duplication. So we worked with Gray Associates to operationalize this as programs that are offered at multiple institutions have low student demand, low market demand, and low or negative contribution margins. And the way I see it, these efficiency measures, the next criterion, are aligned with unnecessary duplication measures. They're kind of looking at the same thing. It's just that unnecessary duplication is analyzed at the state level because by definition, it is across institutions. And then the last criterion is alignment with the statewide strategic agenda. So because of the intense focus on the other criteria during this current process, there wasn't a good way to incorporate this last criterion into the process. And so we will be proposing a new program review policy at the next regular meeting. And just as a preview, it really needs to focus on this last criterion of alignment with the statewide plan.
Melissa?
Yes.
I'm looking up here, unnecessary duplication, student market demand in the 40th percentile or lower. What is that?
So that is in the system with Gray's data. They have percentiles of student demand and market demand. So it basically.
So what does 40th percentile mean?
That the market demand across all markets is in the 40th percentile, meaning it has relatively low market demand. So all those 50 metrics that I mentioned earlier, it's an aggregation of some of those that are related to the market demand, kind of to create an index score. And then that is broken into percentiles.
And the student demand and market demand, those are consumer and student, correct?
Yes, so student demand would be Google inquiries, students asking about the program, and then market demand is the job market demand.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right, thanks. So Heather, next slide, please. So overall, after a couple of years of this, I wanted to highlight some of our main findings. Since fall of 2017 to the present, 157 bachelor's degree programs have been closed or suspended. And the process with Gray, in some instances, validated some of the decisions that the institutions were in the process of making, or in some cases, it provided the much needed data to help make those decisions. And as a result, additional programs were identified for closure through these campus workshops. 218 programs.
Excuse me, just one more. I'm sorry to keep interrupting, but of these 157 suspended programs, closed or suspended, were they all voluntary by the universities, or did they have pressure from CPE or what?
So all of these, the 157 were in the process of being closed at the institutional level. So this
Okay.
gives you, and that's a good question, that gives you an idea of how robust the institutional program review processes are.
Yeah, thank you.
218 programs are classified as either grow or fix. Grow meaning the data is really good, but it's going to take some effort to add students or just really to focus on a growth model. And then some of them were identified as it has relatively healthy demand, but some tweaks may need to be made to the curriculum or some efficiencies need to be addressed. Next, there's 328 programs have healthy market and financial data and operate as is. So basically meaning that they don't need any additional resources to grow, but they're healthy and sustainable. And that is just it's a good feeling to know that across that, the majority of our programs have healthy data. So that's the bottom line for that. And then there were 7 programs at 5 institutions met the criteria for unnecessary duplication. And I just wanted to take a moment to emphasize this point. So out of all the programs in the state, and after working with national experts to identify this, the criteria for unnecessary duplication, only a handful of our programs have been identified. So next slide, please, Heather. So we've used a firm, Gray Associates, that has expertise in academic program portfolio assessment. We've discovered that the vast majority of our programs are holding their own or ready to grow because the conditions are right. And we have found that there's very little unnecessary duplication across our academic programs. So in short, I think we can say that we have a very efficient academic program portfolio in the state of Kentucky. I think this is great news, and I think it's something that we can really be proud of. The past 2 years have been a thorough, intensive, and extensive process, and we now have this new baseline portfolio going forward. So with that, we need to maintain our efforts and the statewide data analysis, but I think it's just time that we turn our attention to the criterion related to alignment with the strategic agenda. Next slide, please. So with this last slide, I wanted to give you a sneak peek of the proposed policy that we'll bring to you at your next regular meeting. So given the thorough process we've just been through, we can think of the next phase as a maintenance phase for the criteria of alignment with institutional mission, unnecessary duplication, and efficiency. Institutions, I would propose, be required to keep their data up and submit annual reports to CPE. In addition, we would continue to do the statewide data analysis to identify any problematic areas or new programs that might meet this definition of unnecessary duplication. And in addition to maintaining these baseline measures, the focus going forward should be on the statewide strategic agenda. Where it makes sense to look at the academic program level, we would focus our efforts on understanding what institutions are doing, what obstacles they're facing, and what we can do at the state level to help overcome these obstacles and fully implement some of these strategies. So this targeted focus on the strategic agenda while maintaining our other efforts would go a long way in helping Kentucky meet our 60 by 30 goal and in helping programs with their continuous improvement efforts, and ultimately in helping students, which is something I know we all take very seriously. So with that, I will take any questions or any further questions.
Melissa, I really like the statewide strategic agenda priorities and the evaluate campus plans to create, implement, and expand initiatives. Each of the comprehensives has a major focus for whether it be law enforcement and pilot training, that sort of thing at Eastern or Moorhead in their how do we as a council help them promote their programs on a statewide basis?
So that is a very good question. And in the sense of, first of all, I think we need to really understand what's going on and their needs. So each program is going to be different.
Right.
What you were referencing was the programs of distinction at our comprehensive universities. But in addition to that, they have other signature programs that they are recognized nationally for, or at least within the state. And so I think the first step is really understanding what they're doing and where they're going. And then we can identify some ways to help facilitate their success.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? If not, we are going to move on, and we're going to have a slight change in our agenda. We're going to move to the statewide strategic agenda development. Our discussion regarding the development of the next statewide agenda. We kicked it off last month, and staff has been hard at work ever since. Lee will give us an update on that work, but first I'm glad to welcome Dr. Stephen Pruitt, who is going to share with us some emerging trends that will be of great help through this development work. Lee, would you like to introduce Dr. Pruitt?
Yes, and thanks, Chair Harper. We are so pleased to welcome Stephen Pruitt to the meeting today to provide some additional context for our strategic agenda development work. Dr. Pruitt is president of the Southern Regional Education Board, which is a collaborative of 16 Southern states that's focused on educational improvement at all levels. He has been at the helm of SREB since 2018. Prior to that, as many of you probably know, Dr. Pruitt was Kentucky's Commissioner of Education. He started his education career as a high school chemistry teacher in Georgia, and then served in several leadership roles at the Georgia Department of Education. And then prior to coming to Kentucky, he was a senior leader at Achieve, the national education organization, where he worked closely with policy leaders around the country to improve science education. Dr. Pruitt, welcome, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Lee. It's great to be with you all today. Well, with you in terms of, the whole virtual experience. Would love to be there with you. In fact, we are, I'm due to get my second shot in a couple of weeks. I can't wait. I have a daughter that's graduating from the University of Kentucky in May, and we are excited about the fact they're going to have face-to-face graduation. So hopefully we'll be back in the bluegrass soon. We certainly miss being up there. So I'm going to share some things with you today. I invite you to feel free to chime in, to ask questions. Hopefully what I can give you is some good information around what's going on around the South, around some work that we did starting back in April of last year around reopening post-secondary, but also give you some recommendations as you guys are going into your strategic planning. Because I really believe that post-secondary is going to be a major engine to getting us back to where we need to be. So I'm going to share my screen. Lee, I just want to double check. You can see my screen, correct?
Yes.
Excellent.
Looks great.
All right. So, I know that all of you at this point are probably tired of being on Zoom and having, the screen share thing. I know I am. When my kids were little, there was a big thing called Flat Stanley. And, if you're not familiar with Flat Stanley, it's where young kids would take this cutout of a kid they call Stanley and take pictures of it. It was really cute. I sort of feel like I'm living in a world of Flat Stanley. I can't wait to see some three-dimensional people soon. But hopefully I can keep your attention and some interest here as we move forward. So first of all, it was great to see some very familiar names and what faces I can see as I was preparing for this, it's, you know, I always have had such a great deal of respect for this board and for the work that you guys are doing. And now that I've left Kentucky and am working across the South, that has actually increased. To see the very deliberate way you guys approach things and the intent that you have to really bring things together. Now, if you're not familiar with the Southern Regional Education Board, just very quickly, we are an organization, like Lee said, that works with our 16 states. Basically, back in 1948, a commission deemed the South as the biggest economic liability in the country. And the governors and legislators at that time came together and said, we can't do this by ourselves. We need a group to help us. So they created SREB as an interstate compact. The short way to think about that is when two states build a bridge over a body of water that connect the two states, they enter an interstate agreement that allows access to the citizenry and they provide funds for maintenance. And we are sort of an education, a metaphorical education bridge across our 16 states. The things that we do well, that we focus on, is to be able to analyze and publish information. We bring people together, we convene them and engage them in conversation around that, and then we support action in the states. So the things I'm going to share with you today are a lot of the things that we have analyzed and published, but they've also been things that we brought people together to really help think through what the implications of that data really are. So first, I'd like to start by just giving a little bit of a framing. There's no doubt that COVID has completely changed the world. I mean, I think we're required by federal law at this point to say the word unprecedented in every presentation you ever do now when the word COVID comes up. But I wanted to be a little bit more focused on the impact that we're seeing on Kentucky and around the South with regard to the workforce. Now, I want to be really crystal clear before I go into this. When I'm talking about post-secondary, I'm talking about post-secondary as the full spectrum. I'm talking about it in terms of our 2-year colleges, our 4-year colleges, and even our certification programs. I'm also really quick to point out to legislators and governors that we also need to always think about balance. We've seen in other countries where there's been a huge investment in 4-year universities, and then they start running short of skilled labor. We've seen where they put a huge investment in 2-year in certifications, and then later you find you don't have enough engineers and scientists and others to really help things along. So we believe strongly that this has got to be a unified, seamless effort from K-12 through post-secondary into the workforce. And we believe that balance is going to be really important in making sure that we have an economic system here in the U.S. that continues to be one of the best in the world. Now, the reason a lot of this is important is because of what's coming by 2030. For the first time in 2030, we are going to have more age-dependent individuals than we do working age. In Kentucky specifically, for every 55 age-dependent, that means people who are under 25 and over 65, there's only going to be 45 working age adults that will actually be contributing into the system. Now, that's a big deal because while we do see people working longer, this also doesn't include any type of special needs. It doesn't include people who are on any type of disability. So for our system to continue to thrive, we're going to need to make sure that we have as many people in the workforce as possible, that they are prepared for that workforce, and that we recognize the way this workforce is changing over time. If you would like more details about this, we did 2 reports, Unprepared and Unaware and the Economic Outlook for the region. We actually have recently followed that up with the effect that COVID has had on the workforce in the South. Currently in Kentucky, these are your numbers, the numbers that I'm sure all of you are very familiar with. So our educational attainment in Kentucky, while we have seen progress, it's going to be really important that we continue to move forward. The thing about the workforce going forward is that we're going to see such a reliance on automation and artificial intelligence that we are no longer going to see some of the low skill, low wage jobs that are even available, much less to have people who are actually ready to go into that higher level of work. I like to tell people we've actually entered the fourth industrial revolution. In other words, no longer are we in that third evolution where computers and robots are working for us. We're actually going to be and we actually are in an era where now computers, robots, other things are working and learning with us. So everybody, we've been saying this for years, that, worried about robots kicking humans out of the workforce. Well, the reality is there's going to be plenty of jobs. The question is, are we going to have people who are ready to take those jobs? Pre-pandemic, these were the top 5 industries in Kentucky. And this was the automation potential before the pandemic. So in food preparation, 69% of that had the automation potential. Sales, office administrative, production, transportation, those things have a great opportunity and potential that automation would simply move into a place where the industry has to keep moving. Well, the problem is that as the pandemic took hold and as we went into a national lockdown for basically 8 weeks, industry kept moving. And what we've seen, and we've done this in concert with looking at research, for instance, from McKinsey Global, we found that the pandemic actually advanced consumer and business digital adoption by about 5 years in just 8 weeks. You see, we thought that we had until 2030 before we would see as many as 18 million unemployable adults. Unemployable, not unemployed. That means they wouldn't have the skills to be involved in the workforce. But now what we see is where we thought we had 2030 as a horizon, we're now looking at the next exit on the interstate, where by 2025, we're going to see significant change in the industry. We already have. In fact, now, based on the new set of data, we're looking at potentially in food preparation, 100% of the actual work being vulnerable to the dependence on automation. We already see where there are various cities across the country that are actually testing driverless cars, driverless Ubers. We already know that out west, driverless tractor trailers have been tested. And so all this means that it doesn't mean that we're not going to have jobs for people. It just means that it ups the ante in making sure that we have a different type of preparation than what we've seen. The fact is that this makes up about 1/3 of the total workforce in Kentucky. So post-secondary is going to have plenty of work. It's got the work of people in the pipeline. It's going to have the work of help and support people who are actually already in the workforce. But let's look at a few post-secondary realities in Kentucky specifically. We know that the proportion of state financial aid that's need-based is about 43%. In our 4-year public college freshmen that persist to second year is about 82%. Our 4-year public college graduating in 6 years or less are about 55%. And our bachelor's graduating with student loan debt is 64%. Now, some of those numbers are better than others. When we look at graduating 4 years or less, we had Complete College America that sort of set this goal of 60%. Kentucky's in range of that. We have other states in the southern region that are nowhere close. So there's some good news there, but it also shows where we have some work that we can still do, especially potentially in the student loan debt area. When we think about this, and as you're thinking about your strategic planning, I can't do this without bringing up the fact that there is a huge need for diversity in our workforce, in our colleges and universities. This is a breakdown of what you see in Kentucky versus the rest of the region. In our 2-year technical colleges, you'll actually see that we've seen a drop in our representation in Black and Hispanics. We've actually seen that across the region, but already we saw that as being lower in Kentucky than in the southern region. And that's, of course, lower than the representation in the state itself. Now, undergraduate students, for instance, with Black students, that's about the percentage population that is in Kentucky, but our faculty is not quite there. In our 4 years, doctoral granting, we still see a significant gap between what happens in Kentucky across versus the rest of the region. The same with our faculty, both full-time and part-time. Again, student-wise, we're about on par, at least with Black students. Hispanic students, though, we still have a ways to go. But again, we've also seen where a little bit of a drop in that. Now, I will say that one of the things that we're always excited about, if we could take a second to toot our own horn a little bit here, is Kentucky is a practicing member with our Doctoral Scholars Program. It's a program that frankly, it's one of the programs I'm most excited about, most proud of at SREB. We are able to provide support to students who are getting their doctorates with the idea that they become academicians, that they actually move into academia themselves. In this program, we tend to see where SREB scholars finish 2 years earlier than other PhD students. It saves them about $120,000 to do that. We've had over 1,100 students of color who have graduated in this program at this point. In Kentucky specifically, about 59% have graduated in STEM fields, and 23% of them stay in Kentucky and do their work. But this is an area, obviously, where we've got to spend some time, especially as you're thinking about your strategic planning. This is not news to anybody. This is out of our college affordability report that in our four-year institutions in Kentucky, we saw where appropriations have sort of had an inverted relationship with tuition and fees. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. As somebody who has a student in a university in Kentucky, I feel that every year. But that also speaks to the fact that we have to continue to think about how we're providing equity. You know, the biggest percentage of students in Kentucky that are in your post-secondary schools live in families that are making $30,000 or less. So the burden that places on our families here is tremendous. With our two-year institutions, you know, appropriations have always stayed above tuition, which obviously is one of the things that keeps tuition down. But we also see where there's been an increase in that over the last really about 8 years. Now, there's some great opportunities for Kentucky right now too. Right now, you're in the middle of your strategic planning effort. And again, kudos to you for doing that. I want to encourage you to really think about how to make this a really strong, data-driven, with feedback loop strategic planning. You know, I've seen a lot of strategic plans over the years, and I've seen where people do them and they kind of set them on the shelf. I've also seen them done well, where there's a constant discussion with the board, where there's feedback loops that allow for you to make course corrections, where there's a real conversation about problem solving and not just identifying problems. The second thing that I'm really excited about is around the Commonwealth Education Continuum. So one of the things that we've really pushed with our governors and legislators has been this idea that if you're really going to make post-secondary, or I'm sorry, the workforce work in your state, you've got to find a North Star. In other words, you need to align your programs. You need to decide what you want your workforce to look like over the next 5 to 10 years. I think this was a big step. When I was in Georgia, at the Georgia Department of Education, one of the best things that was done by the governor at that time was to create the Alliance of Agency Heads, which is similar to what you guys have here, where the group came together, charged by the governor to solve certain problems. At the time, Georgia had a really low graduation rate. We were under 80%. Over time, that has risen to almost 90%. And that, I still believe, is because of the efforts that were put in across agencies. What we've been pushing on people is, if you really want to make a difference, and I do believe that our post-secondary institutions are the engine to drive recovery. If you want a quotable, that's it. I believe that post-secondary will be the engine to recovery. I also believe that we can't make change if we don't start thinking about education as a full and total system. So Kentucky, with this group of having these conversations across K-16 and into the workforce, has a great opportunity if you can put some teeth in it. If you set a North Star, if you align monies that come from Perkins, from ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act in K-12, from WIOA, from monies that come into, and these are all just federal programs, SNAP, TANF, all these things, if they're pointed directly, there's great opportunity. Now, I will tell you that one of the most unpleasant meetings I used to go to when I was in Kentucky, but was also one of the best ones, was the administrative funds that came out of Perkins, where most states actually just formulaically distribute money, some to K-12, some to post-secondary. Those admin funds, we would come together with workforce, with KCTCS, and with K-12 being KDE, and we would talk about the priorities, and we would assign those monies to those priorities. And I say it was one of my least enjoyable because, you know, you go in and you know it's going to be a long debate. But I will tell you, I've not seen another state that does it. The way we approached this in Kentucky was incredible. The next thing that you have an opportunity on is timing and recovery. You know, I hate to say it this way, but people have said you shouldn't let a good crisis go to waste. There's no doubt that COVID has changed our country and how we operate forever. But there's also no reason to think that we can't emerge stronger out of this. But that means we've got to be willing to take some chances. It means that we've got to be willing to think about some things differently. It means we've got to be able to push some envelopes that maybe have been to now been those kind of sacred areas that we didn't really touch. But the focus is on recovery, but it's recovering to be a stronger place. It's not recovery to get back to where we were. Hopefully it's a place where we've kind of adopted the mantra to emerge stronger. So I'm going to leave you with a couple of strategic recommendations for you to think about, and then I'm happy to take questions if you have them. First of all, I'm going to share with you this is a line out of the Shared Responsibility for College Affordability report. This report is several years old now, but it still holds true. During times of financial distress and budgetary shortfalls, which we know that everybody's dealing with, and I know particularly Kentucky is, protecting college access and completion for low-income, middle-income students, including the capacity at the institutions that serve these students, should be the state's highest priority. We can't beat poverty by saying those folks just need to find a way to get more training without having as a priority helping them find ways to do that. And so even in this time of distress, we've got to make this a priority, figuring out how we can support them. I know in Kentucky that your FAFSA rate is down about 9%. In fact, Jennifer Fraker, if you're on the line, don't worry, I got your TikTok coming. We've been planning it, and I can't let Aaron outdo me, even though Aaron danced a lot better than I would. That's a big deal. We've got to find a way to reach out and get to those folks. The second thing is recognizing the future of Kentucky's workforce and the role post-secondary plays in its success. Now, I want to be clear. I believe in the beauty and power of education, and even for education's sake. But I also know that we can't live just in the idea that we are just getting kids to associates or bachelor's or even doctorate degrees. We've got to do a better job around the country. But this is an opportunity for you to think about how do we help kids in our schools, in our institutions, see that the degree they're getting leads them to a place in the workforce. You know, when I was commissioner, I always used to say, we've got to figure out that everything we do leads to a career. And whether that career is right after high school after a couple of years in college or after 4 years in college. We want them to be employed. Abby graduates in May. I can tell you the only person who wants her to be living in my basement less than me is her. And so we've been having conversations with her about workforce for a long time. But this is where you guys as the board can think about how could you strategically put structures in place that both accentuate the role that post-secondary plays, but also help guide more students. I got to give kudos to my friend Aaron. I mean, the things that I've seen him posting and publishing on Twitter and other places about the importance of post-secondary couldn't come at a more critical time. We've got to help people see that. And then the third thing that I would put out is to provide leadership to institutions regarding equity, diversity, legal issues, finance, and policy development while respecting individual differences and audiences of the institutions. In other words, when you're a coordinating board, you can't necessarily direct people to do things in a way that maybe you want to. But that doesn't relieve you of the responsibility to provide leadership, even if it's through guidance, even if it's through task forces and ways to work through things. You know, I've always joked that partnership would be great if it wasn't for all the dang partners. But it's hard. But this is where you guys as a board, where CPE as an entity can really provide leadership by representation, by guidance documents, by bringing people together to talk about these things. I can tell you when COVID first hit and we started having conversations around post-secondary, the biggest things, of course, were legal and finance related. And we know that post-secondary has been disproportionately affected by COVID-19. But if the goal is to simply get finances back to where they were, I think that's a short-sighted goal. I think we have to rethink how we're doing a few things. So as a result, you know, I've got a couple of things I'm going to share with you here that we're doing, but also I think that are really critical to this recovery. Again, I want to commend you on the continuum, and I want to really encourage you to buy all into that. I believe that we can't make change and we can't do what we need to do in recovery without aligning the efforts of K-12, post-secondary, and the workforce. What I see in a lot of states is where there's a K-12, there's a post-secondary, and there's a workforce. Kentucky is really a shining star in the things it's been able to do around Kentucky Stat, around the conversation, around the fact that Aaron sits on the KDE board and that Jason Glass sits on your board. Obviously, it's hard for those two guys to be at all those meetings, but the fact that there has always been an intentional effort to be systematic is huge. But we've got to make sure that we're including the workforce in that too, so that we're fully understanding the seamless transitions between all of these different milestones in a student's life. And then I would encourage you to think about these 4 areas. Providing the leadership and pushing the envelope on things like aligning faculty effort to institutional mission. Yes, we know that academic freedom is a big deal. We know that we need to support that and we need to go forward with that. But we also need to help people see what is the institutional mission and how does the institutional mission fit into a state mission. Administrative efficiencies that are meant to enhance the mission. Notice mission keeps coming up there. So how do you evaluate? I'm not proposing that you go through and do a reorg or you get rid of people. What I'm saying is, how do you make sure everybody's buying into the mission of the institution and subsequently the state? Rethinking how we think about enrollment management and what that strategy looks like. How do we make sure that the students that we are enrolling are going to be successful? And then finally, I do think that we've got to really think about how to ensure that community colleges emerge stronger from this, because that is an area that can affect both students in the pipeline, but also in a big way, people who are currently in the workforce. That doesn't mean that I'm saying that our flagships or our 4-year regional institutions shouldn't also emerge stronger. It's the fact that when you look at the full scope of what community colleges can actually affect. They can actually affect faster folks that are in the workforce as well as those that are coming through. So that was real fast, but I know you guys have a lot to talk about. But I'm happy to take any comments, questions. I just want to again thank Madam Chair and thank CPE for having me today. I always want to thank Dr. Thompson for his friendship and support and letting me be on here. The last time we were together, he was giving me a hard time because I guess my name got thrown around in something else recently. And so it's always great to be able to support him. So thank you for your time and your attention. Happy to take any kind of questions or comments you have.
This is Dr. Stat, and I'm the faculty rep, but one of your areas that you pointed out towards the end is what employers want. It's my understanding that most students that come out with a bachelor's degree, particularly bachelor's, don't have the necessary skills that the employers want. Employers rather would have the critical thinking in place. And then you also mentioned diversity. And I happen to chair the Committee on Equal Opportunity, or our diversity committee. And we talk about diversity, cultural diversity, that sort of thing. But to me, one of the things that's missing in the academic area in so many schools is the diversity of thought. We don't have a good diversity of thought. Too many students are told what to think instead of how to think. That's my comment.
Yeah, and I actually can't debate any of those. I think that there's, diversity comes in many ways. I think that we do have a responsibility to think about diversity in terms of race and gender. But, if we do a better job of teaching people to think critically, that diversity of thought also comes, because you aren't just simply told what to think. And so I can't agree with you more on the importance of that and the importance of helping people see that. I also would say, when it comes to what industry wants, this is why that conversation is so important. So I'll share with you, when I was there, leaders would come to me and say, look, Commissioner, we just want kids to be able to show up on time, have some grit, and they would list, what we call essential skills, what other people call soft skills, whatever. And I'd look at them and I'd go, really? That's all you want a kid to pass a drug test and show up on time? You don't care if they know anything. Well, that's not really what, of course we want them to know something. And so what I found in those conversations was, if you have the conversation, you don't see the press releases and you don't see the comments to legislatures and all that of, we just need kids that can show up on time and have soft skills. You actually do get some of that knowledge base in there too. And so I think that's why that conversation with them is so critical, that yes, Dr. Stat, we absolutely meet those needs of what they need with regard to those critical thinking skills, but we also help them see that the knowledge that kids are coming with should be important as well.
Fine. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. Lee, I'll turn it back over to you to kind of give us next steps.
Well, thanks, Chair Harper, and thanks, Dr. Pruitt, for joining us today. I think as CPE dives more deeply into the development of the new agenda, it's going to be very important to hear from national and regional voices and perspectives like yours to help guide this work. So thanks again for joining us, taking the time out. I thought that your comments were terrific.
I'm always happy to help Kentucky.
Good deal. I just want to provide a very quick update on the work that's been going on related to strategic agenda development since your last meeting in February. We have included a lot of detail in the board book starting on page 148, so you may want to reference back to that page. But to give a higher level overview, we have started a series of one-on-one interviews. We're developing some focus group sessions, I've already scheduled those, and group sessions to gather information and a range of opinions and perspectives about key issues facing the post-secondary system and our students. Most of these meetings and interviews will take place by the end of April, and they will be conducted by Stephanie Ashley, our partner from the EKU Facilitation Center, whom we met at the last meeting. For the executive interviews, we are meeting individually with each of the university presidents and the KCTCS president and the IQ president, key legislators, the lieutenant governor, and other state leaders. For the group sessions, we're meeting with a range of groups. For example, CPE's faculty and student advisory committees. We're meeting with the campus provost, the campus budget officers, CPE senior staff. And, of course, we'll have regular conversations with this committee and the full board over the next 6 to 9 months. We're also having a number of sessions that are going to zero in on some key policy issues where we're inviting 20 or so leaders and practitioners that have a particular expertise in the policy area. So they'll join the sessions for an in-depth conversation about the particular issue. So, for example, we'll have a session on college affordability. We'll have one on access and college going, career and workforce development, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also ways to effectively engage our adult learners, folks who have really sort of dropped out of the post-secondary system at a higher rate during this pandemic. We are convening a campus advisory group that is comprised of institutional effectiveness and planning leaders that will meet regularly with CPE staff throughout the planning process. And they're going to provide regular input and expertise and also work with us to ensure that there's good alignment between the state agenda and the campus planning. And finally, in the agenda item on 148, we have included a more detailed outline of the strategic agenda work for this committee, the ASI committee, and the CPE board. So if you have any questions about, what topics you might be tackling at each meetings, we've outlined that there. We've also highlighted dates when specific action will be taken. For example, adopting mission, vision, and values, or making decisions on priorities or drafts of the agenda. So that was very quick, but I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you have recommendations for changes or additions, we would be happy to consider those and add those to the list.
Lee, the group interviews are in the focus area sessions. Are those going to be open to council members if we wanted to listen in, or how are those going to be conducted?
Absolutely. Just if you're interested in participating or listening in, if you could shoot me or Heather a note.
Sure.
And particular, topics that you want to be involved in, we'll make sure that you get an invitation to those.
Perfect.
So if there's nothing else on that sort of high level overview, I am very happy to talk about one of the projects that we have started recently, which is a detailed review of each of the campus strategic plans to analyze how each of those aligns with state goals, objectives, and progress measures. Jessica Ramius on our staff, I'm delighted to introduce her. She is leading this work and is going to provide some preliminary information about the project and some early findings. A final report will be provided at the ASI meeting in April. So Jessica, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lee. So for this project, I'm comparing each institution's current plans. So again, 8 public four-year universities and then the KCTCS system as a whole. Taking those current plans and comparing them to the strategies and metrics within CPE's 2016 through 2021 strategic agenda. So I envisioned this process to have 4 phases, and I came up with the acronym CAMP for those phases. Phase 1 was to compile and compare each of the institution's plans with the CPE strategic agenda. Phase 2 is to analyze for alignment and potential gaps, and I'll talk more about this in a moment. Phase 3 is to meet with constituents as needed. And then phase 4 is to produce a comprehensive guide using my findings. And this guide hopefully will aid the development of the new strategic agenda for CPE for any adaptations or additions that we might want to make. Next slide, please. So the method that I am using to complete this project is to compile the strategic plans. And we also want to, I believe, update CPE's website so that each institution's plan is easily accessible on the CPE website. And then next is to complete the CPE crosswalk. So comparing all of the institution's plans with both the metrics and strategies. And using these crosswalks, I'm going to identify areas of alignment with CPE's current plan. And I'm using a rating scale of 1 to 3 to do this for the crosswalk, that is, for both the metrics and the strategies. For 1, I am defining that as minimal alignment. So the institution's strategy is a bit vague, or they do not have any metrics. A 2 indicates partial alignment. So they have a similar strategy to CPE's or a similar metric. And then 3 indicates strong alignment. So they have an exact strategy that matches CPE or an exact metric. So after I identify areas of alignment with CPE, I'll be looking for commonalities across institutions. So those 2s and 3s, partial to strong alignment, that are common across multiple institutions. And using that, I will be looking for potential gaps that we might have in CPE's current strategic agenda. And so I'm defining gaps as the common areas that were partial to strong alignment that were not mentioned at all within CPE's strategies or metrics currently. And then hopefully with all of this information, I would like to sort of write a narrative of institutional highlights to just point out sort of unique aspects of each campus's plan if possible. Next slide, please. So my progress so far, I have already completed the metric crosswalk because it's a bit more straightforward. And I'll talk more about that in just a second. But for phase 2, which is where I'm currently at with analyzing alignment and gaps, and this is very broad sort of key terms so far that I've seen in my preliminary scans of each institution. So CPE alignment, a lot of schools mention diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I think we could give credit to our public post-secondary policy for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Retention and graduation rates, academic excellence, career readiness, information literacy, and then regional pipelines and partnerships. And then some commonalities / potential gaps I've seen so far are institutions wanting to have an increased focus on national rankings and recognition, holistic student support, sustainability, and efficiency when it comes to resources, infrastructure and technology, campus employee satisfaction, international student recruitment. And then I also have noticed that many institutions discuss support for all majors versus just that heavy STEM focus that we tend to see recently. Next slide, please. So my next steps are to continue with phase 2 and analyzing for alignment and potential gaps, but also phase 3 was to meet with constituents as needed. And this is because many institutions do not have public facing metrics or no metrics at all within their published strategic agenda. So I do want to try to set up meetings with that. And I do believe David is going to help me because I would like to try to fill in as much as possible for the final report instead of just leaving it blank, saying that they didn't have metrics, because I'm sure that they do, they're just not published. So I'm going to continue doing this work. I'm really excited about this project. And like Lee mentioned previously, I believe we're hoping to provide a more comprehensive update at the April meeting.
Jessica, thanks so much. Chair Harper, if there's no questions, that's our update on the strategic agenda development. And
okay, thank you. Any questions before we move on? If not, we're going to go back up to have an opportunity to have David show us some of our expansive statewide innovation that's come through CPE data. And we've got several reports that have already been released this month and several more scheduled to follow in the coming weeks. So I'm going to turn it over to David. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Harper. Before I share my screen, and I'll share some summary slides from a couple of our important releases over the course of this month, I'd like to thank my team publicly, because we have had just an incredible month, and you guys may have seen some of it in the regional and the national media. First, we've released our education sector analysis, which I'm going to show you slides on, and Dr. Ellis and I are going to present that to you. But we have also given the first release of our return on investment, a research brief on lifetime earnings. And you may have seen that we look at these lifetime earnings by attainment level, and the message certainly is, the higher attainment level, the better earning that you're going to have, and it's a pathway to middle class. But one of the important takeaways is our comparison of gender earnings, male versus female, and then our comparison of race and ethnicity, which will be released in early April. And so we're super excited about it. You may have seen this morning that First Lady Bashir did reference those challenges of female earnings compared to their male counterparts by attainment level. And then finally, we have a release with our sister agency, KY Stats, called the Multi-State Post-Secondary Report, that is the first of its kind to release workforce outcomes with bordering states. And President Pruitt is also highlighting this work in the SREB and beginning to work with other SREB states, that now we can tell you if a Kentucky graduate is working in the state of Ohio or Indiana or Tennessee. And so I'd like to publicly thank KY Stats and our team, Travis Muncie, our director, G. Dye, Grace, and others who have worked directly on this project. And so we're super excited about those three. So with that, I'm going to jump right into our sector analysis. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Can you guys see that first slide? Great. So you may recall that we've had three sector analyses. This is the third of the three. The first was focused on engineers in the state of Kentucky. The second was healthcare. And this is, in fact, our education sector analysis, which focuses on teacher prep programs. And the primary question is whether or not we are meeting the workforce demand in terms of the number of graduates that are supplied from our teacher prep programs. So I'm going to ask Dr. Amanda Ellis, who is a co-researcher on this project, to give her highlights. She is Associate Vice President for K-12 projects and policies. And to give you a real sense from a continuum standpoint of how this is being interpreted and what are the action items. It's really important to note that these research questions seem very straightforward, but you know that there's a lot of research out there from our sister agencies in KDE and in EPSB, right? And those folks that oversee, directly, these teacher pipelines and certainly the teacher workforce. So what we intended to do here is not step on toes, but really better understand the projections out to 2030 so that we can work with our campuses to look at growth and look at diversity to meet those workforce demands. And I think we've done it here. Now, remember, this is done in conjunction with a company called EMSI, E-M-S-I, which is econometrics and modeling. So they do these projections for us. And then we overlay the actual number of graduates in the state of Kentucky, and we see, where those gaps exist. So the first slide basically, so I don't bury the lead here, shows you that very research question. In green, you get a sense for what we are projecting as the number of annual openings of educators directly working with students in the state of Kentucky. And so you see that's going to be around 4,000 annual openings in 2030. Now, if you look at the blue line and you see the number of baccalaureate or higher completers in the state of Kentucky in education, you get a sense for that gap being about 1,000 positions per year. And so what you're going to see as we go through the slides is not so much that we're seeing a boom in education jobs. This very much flows directly with population size, but you are going to see a steady increase as we try to return back to 2010 levels. We're never going to get back to those 2010 levels, as you'll see, but we are going to see some growth between 2020 and 2030. So this is a comparison to the national growth, and this is similar to our challenges with population growth and overall jobs. We're not going to increase in the education sector or overall jobs in the state of Kentucky as quickly as the US or as substantially as the US numbers. However, it is an important component of our overall workforce in Kentucky. So if you look at the 2020 number of jobs there, the 63,800, you'll note that that is very much below the total number in the education sector. And so our total number in the education sector is 91,000. So we've teased out these groups because, again, we want to focus on K-12 and we want to focus on those folks working directly with our Kentucky students. So if you look at the bottom there in the light blue, the education school teachers, this is very indicative of the sector overall. So you see a decrease from about 25,000 in 2010, to 2020, but then you're going to see an uptick to 2030, but we'll never get back to those 2010 levels. So in other words, there's going to be growth and the market is healthy, and we should encourage more students to go into teaching professions. Yet, we're not going to see an explosion in growth. It's just going to be very steady. But given that the industry holds about 91,000 jobs, of a workforce in Kentucky that's, about 2 million, this is a very, very important sector. And so we're going to unpack this a little more carefully. And then I'm going to ask for Amanda's feedback on several of these slides. So here you'll see 2 slides on wages and then 2 slides on diversity. And we'll pause after the wages and open it up for questions and get some Amanda's feedback. But you see, as I showed you on the previous slides, you're really getting a sense for the secondary school, middle school, and elementary school with a slow but steady growth, 1% to 2%. And those salaries sitting in the mid to upper 50s as a median annual wage. The big growth is going to be in pre-K teachers, and you see that in the bottom right of our scatter plot there. That there's going to be a 6% growth, and you've read about President Biden's plan in terms of expansion of pre-K workforce. This will continue to grow, but we also know that those salaries are very challenging, and less than 40,000. So you see on this slide, and this is a lot to digest. So certainly we are not suggesting you can get through all of it, but this is a stack rank with our benchmark states that we've used with our MC partner. And if you look at the third row from the top, the elementary school teachers, that 53,139 as that median annual wage, that compares right in the middle of our benchmark states. So in other words, we're ahead of Indiana and we're ahead of Tennessee, but we're behind Florida, Ohio, and Texas. That small circle there you see with partially shaded. The more shaded you get, the better we're doing. So that's on a 5-point Likert scale. And in most areas, elementary, middle, and high school, you see that we're fourth in this stack rank. In some of these areas where the demand is super high in Kentucky and we're not able to fill the positions, the pre-K teachers, the teacher assistants, you'll see that those shaded circles are darker and more substantially colored, because we're getting more of a demand and salaries have gone up. But noting that salaries are still very, very low relative to the whole education sector. So let me pause here and see if we have questions. And I'd also like to invite Dr. Ellis to just give a couple of her thoughts.
Yeah, so just a few thoughts, and definitely, this study aligns pretty well with what we've seen. When I worked at the department, they have to report critical shortage areas every year to the U.S. Department of Education, and we started doing that by our workforce regions in Kentucky, because the regions really do have some differences on what their needs are. But overall, just as David's study has shown up, is that we are not going to be able to meet the demand. The supply won't. And we've seen the continuing decline in enrollment in traditional educator pathways. And so I will say that KDE is focused on this. They now house the Education Professional Standards Board, which is the one who administers the certifications, looking at alternative certifications and ways to recruit students into the education career. There's even a teacher leader pathway, which grants dual credit towards those who may be interested in education. And there used to be a Future Educators of America that has since changed to Educators Rising, a student organization. And we have had national winners with that, and Kentucky has just reestablished that organization in the last 3 or 4 years. So there are efforts around that. I know we will get to diversification here soon. I will tell you what is the positive piece around Kentucky as far as preschool teachers go, is if you'll notice that that's a full black dot, because our preschool teachers who are in the school setting, not private settings, but in the school settings, are paid as a certified teacher. And that does not happen in all states. And so if you notice, childcare administrators and pre-K and daycares, depending on how they are funded, are typically pretty they struggle to offer competitive wage to their preschool staff. There also is a STARS program that rates their quality. And part of that is the certification of their staff and improving the capacity of their staff. And so as their staff improves capacity, it makes them eligible for higher wage jobs, which means that they typically leave those childcare centers and either seek out certification, or they may come into the public school setting and seek out to be a fully certified preschool teacher. So that's an interesting thing. The Early Childhood Advisory Council, through the Governor's Office of Early Childhood, are coming up with different approaches to deal with that and to increase quality of care. Because as a lot of you may have heard, or even in your own businesses, the importance of early childhood and quality care impacts not just the strong start of our youngest students, but also is a sustainability piece with many of our employees if they have a strong childcare system. But really, the other thing to point out is that if we are in need, and this is what I've told David, of elementary teachers in the near future, that's a big deal because our biggest criticism of Kentucky and much of our nation is that we produce way too many elementary teachers and not enough junior high and high school teachers, so secondary teachers. And that is still true. We still need to increase on that. And there have been efforts around different certification for those who specialize, especially in science and mathematics. Tends to be an issue. Special education is also a challenge as well. So there are definite approaches. This is not sitting idle, but this is also why it is a piece of our continuum that we've mentioned multiple times, because if we don't have a strong teacher workforce, then our students won't be well prepared to go into their own post-secondary plans and pursue the careers that they want to pursue if they're not well prepared. So this is a very timely study, an important study, and one that we have teamed up with KDE on to really share a common message, who also, as I said before, oversees the EPSB for certification purposes. So I appreciate David and their work that they've done. It's been really interesting, to say the least.
Do we have any quick questions on what we've presented so far? We have a couple more slides that we're going to talk about the diversity of the education workforce. Before I move on, and please jump in with questions, I'd like to thank Dr. Ellis. She's guided so much of this research, and we've really built a fantastic collaboration with our partners at KDE and EPSB with her help. And it's so important here because we're looking at so many national data sources in this case, but we also have really robust local and state level data sources, and blending those together is super tricky. So I'd like to really publicly thank her for that. We'll also note that in terms of the regional question, the geographic question, within the report, we attempt to flesh out some of the high level actionable items within each region. And I think that's critically important, as Dr. Ellis said, because, there's so much of this that is trending with our population when we talk about job growth and we say, well, we are going to need more elementary school teachers. Well, that growth is being propelled, in these larger metropolitan areas within the state of Kentucky. But then as we look at, middle school and high school in more rural communities, there's a lot of discussion and need in terms of what's going on there, and the specialization, the access to teachers with a variety of backgrounds to help our students. And so we really think that's a critical piece, and that's all in the bigger report. So I have two more slides to share with you, and these are both on the diversity, the demographics on the education workforce. This is no surprise to anyone on the call that, in fact, the largest proportion or the largest group of our K-12 educators are white females between 24 and 34. That second bullet there on the slide, about 10% of our workforce are people of color, is an important one, and it does very much vary by region, and it varies by level. And so you see in the high school teacher area, we're a little less than that, but in that pre-K workforce, we have an overrepresentation of minority candidates and workers. So in the end, we're not keeping up with the diversification of our student, the students that we serve. And so, a couple of highlights, I would just say that, as we look at African-American, for example, teachers to our students to teachers, you see about a 3.2 ratio. In other words, 3 over 3 African-American students to every African-American faculty. So we've made progress here. You can see in 2001, we were below 4% for that group, and we're pushing up just over 5%. But as President Pruitt said, we continue to have much work to do, given the diversification of our students, and trying to get a better reflection of the faculty that serve them in terms of those demographics. So I'll pause here and turn it over to Amanda.
Yeah, so just really quick, I know we're really close on time, but this is exactly why the Lieutenant Governor and Governor, excuse me, hosted a press conference a couple of weeks ago. Of course, President Thompson was on there, as well as several Kentucky Board of Education members. And basically this, their KATE efforts, which is the Kentucky Equity and Achievement in Teaching Academy, I believe. I could be getting that acronym wrong, but it's really about diversification of the workforce and the importance of that. And so $1 million was approved to be given to KDE, and part of those funds come to CPE to support the work of really soliciting more candidates of color, more diversity in our teacher workforce. Because as David said, many of our employees of color are in classified positions as assistants or in preschool settings who may not be certified, but we certainly want to increase our certified staff. And so the efforts around that is some of the things I already mentioned. Excuse me. We'll also be working with our colleges of education on improved efforts on really recruiting a more diverse student body into their teacher candidacy and support around that. And so that's what the efforts are for and why we need this, because it's been pretty stagnant. Really, if you look, it's over almost 10 years and we really haven't had a huge influx of teachers of color and to really match the population of our students. And so I know local districts, some are really making some intentional efforts for recruitment and are having luck with that. So we definitely have models to promote within our state. Excuse me. Again, this is part of the work of the work group for the continuum because this is absolutely essential if we're going to reach more students in Kentucky to excel and go after their career goals and what they would like to accomplish. We must be prepared and provide them with a much stronger and diverse teacher workforce. So this is a great point again that just supports this and why it's an important endeavor in our state.
And thank you, Dr. Ellis. And please stay tuned. We are planning a webinar to really unpack this report with Dr. Ellis and several other leaders across the state so that we can talk about those initiatives at the district level, at the school level, and really give you a sense for how we're making these types of data points actionable. We're sometimes we get accused of, bringing a lot of bad news, but I think it's really more to help us uncover, those actionable items and build on the work that is currently being done. Because when you look at things at the state level, again, you have to drill down and talk about what's going on in individual districts. And there's a lag between what you see with that work and the overall change. And so we're still very optimistic about this report. There's a lot of good news in it as well. So stay tuned. I know we're running very short on time, and I'll leave you with this. The return on investment report is going to be released later this spring. And again, as I said from the beginning, we did receive a really good amount of attention on our lifetime earnings, especially when we talk about the gender comparisons and females making less than males in the state of Kentucky. And so we hope you'll read that and ask questions and help us disseminate those results. And again, I'd like to thank my team for that very comprehensive research. And then we'll be releasing dual credit outcomes, the second check there on the right at KCTCS. And then finally, as you guys know, there's been such a tremendous growth in the number of certificates conferred from KCTCS mostly, but some of our four-year institutions as well. We're going to look at whether that is helping Kentucky families, because there is a big difference between very, very short certificates and then certificates that go 3 or 4 semesters. And so we're going to unpack that as well. So a lot to talk about. And again, we do have the new release of our shared interactive tool so that we can see workforce outcomes, especially, across the Ohio border, Indiana border, Tennessee border, and that is in your packet as well. So a lot to talk about from the research side, but I'll stop there, Chair Harper, and answer any questions if we have time. If not, we can table for the next for the next meeting.
All right. Well, I know we're slow on time, but does anybody have in particular question? If not, we will proceed. Thank you all very much. So we're going to go on. We have basically some agency updates before we adjourn today. I wanted to give Greg just a couple minutes to give us an update on legislative activity as it relates to post-secondary education. Greg?
I'll make this quick. I know we're really short on time. Real briefly, we're kind of at the end of the session. The legislators are back Monday and Tuesday to finish up. At this point, we have 4 bills that affect higher ed that have been signed by the governor and are law now. Senate Bill 68, which is kind of flown under the radar, and it's a technical bill for the University of Kentucky. It exempts them from the distilling requirements. Minimum quantities to be a licensed distiller, and that's related to their partnership with Beam Suntory. Senate Bill 135 obviously was a significant bill for us this time. That was the performance funding bill that incorporated the changes of the work group, went through without any problems. Senator Givens and Representative Tipton shepherded that bill through the legislature and with no opposition. Senate Bill 214 was specific to NKU and facilitated their exit from the Kentucky Employees Retirement System. Big thing is it authorized the bonds that they need to pay off their liability and exit. House Bill 158, another specific bill for Eastern Kentucky University, and allowed them to have members on the Central Kentucky Regional Airport. EKU's aviation programs based there, and they're actually a significant portion of that airport traffic. And they are in the process and have been funded to construct a state-of-the-art flight training center there. We've got four bills that have passed both chambers and are awaiting either the governor's signature or a veto that affect higher ed. And one of them is really more of a K-12 bill, but I bring it up because it has a potential impact on enrollment this fall. That's Senate Bill 128, which is Senator Wise's bill that allows students in K-12 to repeat the year at their choice. So if they feel like they didn't get what they needed this year, they have the opportunity to repeat that year. It is subject to approval by local districts, and it's a all or nothing thing. So a district can choose not to allow students to take advantage of this, or they have to allow all students to take advantage of this in that district. There's estimates that there would be between 3 and 8% of students that would take advantage of this. If that's true, and the districts agree, that could affect the graduating class this May, and which would be the incoming class this fall, by 3 to 8%. Again, don't know where that would hit with students that might go to college or might not go to college, but it's just something that the institutions are tracking and aware of. House Bill 8 was the another bill that was ultimately supported by our institutions. It is the bill that changes the funding model for the retirement system, moves to level dollar funding away from percentage of payroll, realigns who owes the liability, had a significant financial impact for many of our institutions, which was quite concerning. But the legislature provided a subsidy to offset those increased costs in the state budget. Now the subsidy declines over a 4 or 5 year period and will eventually hit about 60% of their actual cost, but they found that to be a much more beneficial than the alternatives, which were a significant increase in their pension costs this year. House Bill 192 is the state budget. It's one of the better budgets for higher ed probably in the last 10 years. It's included the subsidy we talked about for the pension costs for the comprehensives that participate in the retirement system. That kind of gets us past that question, we hope, going forward, and moves us on beyond the pension issue for them. Also includes 2% for the performance funding pool. The governor had recommended 1% to base funding, 1% performance funding pool. The ultimate budget put both those funding amounts in the performance funding pool. Very few capital projects that are state funded, only 2. A roof repair project at KSU for $5 million, and a state contribution toward the UK Sanders Brown Center on Aging and Neuroscience at UK, $14 million state contribution matched with $14 million other funds. And then the last bill I've got on my list is House Bill 258, which creates a new pension system for people in teachers' retirement system beginning January 1 of 22. The universities are a relatively minor part of that system, but this bill was, they were all in favor of this. It provides portability, and it's a hybrid model, and they feel for those faculty members that do choose teachers, this has some good options for them. That's pretty much it for things that have passed or are awaiting signature. I think Travis has got a few things to mention on some bills that have not made it to this point. We don't think they're likely to, but you never know. But often these things come back from session to session. So that's all I've got.
Thank you. Travis, do you have anything to add?
Just very quickly, there were 4 bills I'll mention that didn't pass, but you may get attention in upcoming sessions that should probably be on your radar. One was the Student Bill of Rights, Student Discipline Bill, as we were calling it, House Bill 145. It passed the House, didn't really receive any attention in the Senate, but essentially it would have added some parameters around the student disciplinary proceedings. Obviously, campuses are already providing a level of due process for students, but this would amplify that a bit and put a few additional requirements in place. There was a bill, House Bill 383, was a keys expansion bill. It would expand keys to proprietary institutions not receiving Title IV funding, which would dramatically change the nature of that program. It passed the House and received a couple readings in the Senate, but was not taken up in committee. So we'll be on the watch for that. There was the Better Kentucky Promise program, House Bill 383. That was, you may recall, that was in the governor's budget, which is essentially a free community college, free associate's degree program, actually, program. Would expand the Work Ready Scholarship program to cover everything up to an associate's degrees in all our public institutions and private nonprofit institutions offering those programs. It reported favorably out of House Education, and I think Dr. Thompson testified on that. Well, again, it was funded in the governor's budget, but we may see that again. There was also House Bill 253, which is a FAFSA completion for high school as a high school graduation requirement with some exceptions. Also reported favorably out of House Education. Again, as you know, the council's really pushing FAFSA completion. And so we may see a form of that again. There was a form of it proposed in the last session, so we expect to see it come around again next session as well. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry we're a little bit over time, but I wanted to get some of that in. So unless someone else has anything they'd like to bring before the committee today. All right. If not, I believe that's all we have for today. Unless there's an objection, I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, everyone.